Hello to Franco Nation and the Movie Club Nation. Now normally I don't make video responses, but you said Who Framed Roger Rabbit and I said I gotta be there. So I have 6 pages of Movie Club notes and a half cup of Molotov cocktail. Later. I'm going to answer your questions first before I get into the review. The reason I'm dressed like this is because if you saw my actual face, you would turn into a clicker. And secondly, the reason this video is on it is because the technical producer and I, well, let's just say the technical producer is under the weather. So, who framed Roger Rabbit? I think the real question is, who is Roger Rabbit? Because when I saw this movie the first time, I was about yay high, maybe a little shorter, at the age of 10. And I had no idea who he was. And I came into this movie halfway. But I still love it, and this movie is in my top 5. You've got Tucker and Dale versus Evil. You've got Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then you've got Mel Brooks' famous Blazing Saddles. Now, some of you might be wondering, why is this movie not at number 1? Well, that's because you'd have to go through Casablanca. It's a mad, 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 mad world. And believe me, these are 2 very good movies. But we're here to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This movie is basically the coalescence of 3 people. Yeah, 3 people. You've got Steven Spielberg, who is the executive producer, so you know this movie is going to be good, even though he's not directing. Then you've got Zemeckis as the director, so you know this is going to be a great art piece, and it is. And then you've got the uncredited and the late great Mel Blanc. My hat off to you, sir. Now, why am I putting Mel Blanc? Well, because without him, none of us, and I mean none of us, from the 90s backwards, all the way to 1936, would have had as great a childhood if Mel Blanc had not existed. Starting from the little pink fellow known as Porky Pig, doing the Jack Benny show, creating Bugs Bunny in World War II, so that he could sell bonds, all the way up to doing the Jetsons, the Flintstones, Woody Woodpecker, Captain Caveman, Yogi Bear. The list literally goes on forever. This man was a great man, and I seriously question how good would any of our childhoods have been if he had not existed. Ah, I'm rambling. Actually, I have a fun fact about him. He answered every single fan letter he ever got. Now, let's put this in perspective. If you're to take the amount of views that a Philip DeFranco video usually gets, which is up in the 200s, he used to get that amount in fan mail, which is basically enough fan letters to fill an entire room, and he would answer every single one of them. But on top of that, he would do phone calls to children, and he would call kids and write to them. He would write to kids and call them on their birthdays and wish them happy birthday in the voice of their favorite cartoon character, which is mind-blowing, because think about it. If you're 8 to 10 years old, hell, even if I was 16 years old and I was to get a phone call from Bugs Bunny wishing me happy birthday, I could die happy right there. That is just the best. And it's so sad the way he passed. He fell out of a hospital bed after shooting a commercial for Oldsmobile with his son. He broke his leg and he died of blood poisoning. Oh. And he actually died the year after doing the voices for this movie. So that's Mel Blanc in a nutshell. But that is extremely off topic. Back to the movie. The movie, you can tell this is a Zemeckis film because the attention to the detail in the background, this movie places you in the 1940s. I mean, for everything from the props all the old time cameras, the desks, the cars, the streetcar, everything, to all of the human supporting characters. They're a little bit cardboard cutout-ish because you've got your typical stereotypes. You've got the scummy studio exec R.K. Maroon, who is just a cookie full of arsenic. Not even arsenic. He's slime. He's slime. And then you've got Dolores, who is the mistreated girlfriend who still loves Eddie no matter what. And then you've got Eddie, this hard gumshoe with an alcohol dependency. Oh, Eddie Valens is just played so well, so well. The expositions, and this is the good thing about his character. He expositions, but he expositions silently, and it moves the story forward. So you find out he's a gumshoe. How do you find out he's a gumshoe? He's taking a job for R.K. Maroon. Okay, good. We find out that he doesn't like tunes. How do we find out? He doesn't want to go to Toontown. Why doesn't he want to go to Toontown? Because we find out that his brother got killed there, and we find out that he's an alcoholic. And we see that he's an alcoholic first by just the sheer amount of alcohol he drinks. Then we see Dolores, and we see the barflies, and we see all that stuff, and it just puts you into that 1940s mindset of the great studio system. And it's just such a beautiful picture piece. But if that's the human cast, then they set up the atmosphere, then Roger Rabbit. What can we say about Roger Rabbit? He's an actual Disney character, surprisingly enough. He had his own comic book series in the 70s and the 80s. But even so, as a very long-running Disney character, he ran for almost 10 years. He's still a relative unknown, and that's what makes this movie work. Because as an unknown, he can draw from all the different cartoon characters that we love, and he can just amplify like a movie projector screen makes a picture bigger. He can just take those personalities and make them even more exaggerated, more exaggeration, more exaggerated emotion, more slapstick. The scene where he drinks alcohol and then bursts out of the window probably illustrates that the best. And the reason this works is because he's an absolute unknown. So he can take from everybody without looking like they're stretching the character or they're just ripping off another one. Like, nobody would say that Roger Rabbit is a rip-off of Bugs Bunny. Well, there are a few people who would say that Roger Rabbit is a rip-off of Bugs Bunny, but let's not get into that. And it's just because he's a blank slate. This movie would not have worked with any other character. We needed a character that was slightly familiar, but at the same time so unknown that he could do all that borrowing. And Roger Rabbit fits this perfectly. I mean, if this movie was done with Chilly Willy or Porky Pig, it would not be done as well, simply because we know what their personalities are, and we already have movies about them, and you just don't want to tamper with that. Okay, but if we came because of the cartoons, we stayed because of Jessica Rabbit. It's time to introduce that lady who introduced all of us to puberty. Oh, I now remember who my favorite SourceFed host is. Sorry, Lee Newton. I'm sorry, Trisha Hirschberger. Sorry, Steve Zaragoza. It's actually Joe. But why? Jessica. She is such a memorable character. There even people who haven't seen this movie know who Jessica Rabbit is. And I think the reason is this. It's the impression that she makes with her entrance. It's just you're forced to focus on her, and she just blows it out of the water. How do I know this? Because she's not introduced as one of the other characters just scooting through the background. No, this is front and center. She steals the stage. I bet you didn't know that there's a penguin orchestra in the background playing to her. Why? Because nobody was paying attention to any of the background scenes. It was all Jessica. And I think the reason is this. She's sexy and sensual without being a sexual object. She's that busty, femme fatale, no-nonsense woman that everybody is just in love with. That every woman wants to be, and everybody... Eddie Valiant put it perfectly. You have no idea what it's like to be a man looking at a woman who looks the way you do. That sums up Jessica Rabbit perfectly. And yet, at the same time, while she is this powerful, powerful female character, she still ends up as the damsel in distress. Because she'll still do anything for her husband, and she still gets captured, and she still ends up dangling from a hook in the middle of a warehouse next to Toontown, about to get dipped. And if redheads are soulless, then thank God for Jessica Rabbit. Then again, there is Tina Hyena. But if Jessica is the main attraction, you know who that brings us to. Speaking of getting dipped. Oh, Judge Doom. Oh, Judge Doom, Judge Doom. Christopher Lloyd, this is probably one of your best characters ever. I said Judge Doom's name 3 times. You can't hear this, but there's a thunderstorm in my backyard right now. I was actually going through a top 100 list of scary movie characters. And we saw Hannibal, and I saw Hannibal Lecter. And he scares me. Saw Robert Mitchum from the Night of the Hunter. Ugh, that scares me. But then I saw somebody who I didn't expect, Judge Doom. And you know how most people feel fear in the pit of their stomach? Well, I feel it at the other end of my digestive tract. So that clamped shut, and let's just say I couldn't go to the bathroom for an entire hour. But oh my gosh, Judge Doom, you are the scariest character in this entire movie. Just those red eyes. I did a Judge Doom impression to my mother as soon as I was finished watching this movie. I wasn't allowed to watch TV for an entire night the next day. This is just how over the top this character is. I mean, oh my gosh. And it works. He just starts with that monotone, and it's just so sinister, and he just carries it throughout the entire movie. He's so eager to destroy Toons. He's a Toon himself. Oh, I mean, he grabs that poor little shoe and just dips it, and it didn't do anything. And he pushes a little person to the floor. I don't know if you noticed this when in the bar scene, but when he was describing Roger Rabbit's height, there's a little person there. He puts his hand on his head and he forces him to his knees. A little person. I mean, oh my gosh. And then there's that line at the end. What do we do with him, boss? Let him watch his Toon friends get dipped, then shoot him. He is ruthless. Oh my gosh. I mean, his character. Wow. I love him. If you want to find out why, stay to the end of the video. There are many lines in this movie that get to me, but the one particular one is this one that Roger says when he's hiding in the bar. And it's when Valiant is grilling him, and he's like, "Why? Because you made him laugh." And he's like, "A laugh is a very powerful thing, and sometimes it's our only weapon." And up to today, that is such a true statement. I mean, how do you criticize a politician without coming across as left-wing or right-wing or as some kind of extremist? It's through a laugh. There's a reason why Jon Stewart is the most powerful newsman in the world. It's because he can deliver the news and he can say what needs to be said in a way that makes everybody laugh. And this goes back way far back. I mean, it's not just this movie that's saying it. If you look at Mel Brooks, The Producers, where Mel Brooks is essentially laughing at Hitler and turning Hitler into a laughingstock. I mean, what better revenge is there on Hitler than to turn Hitler into a laughingstock. And if you don't laugh at him, just think about it this way. If you don't laugh at him, you're giving him power, and that would be his ultimate victory. So Mel Brooks actually found a way to defeat Hitler's image after his own death and demise, and after everything bad that he did. By laughing at him, we tear him down. And you can go back even further than this. If you go back to the old Monty Pythons with the Holy, not the Holy Grail, the Life of Brian, where you've got Pontius Pilate. He's standing over all of Jerusalem. He is the master of Israel. And then he starts to speak, and everybody just starts laughing at him, and he can't figure out why. And it just completely takes him out. And it just completely takes him out of his zone, and people are absolutely laughing, and he just becomes so powerless. So the idea that that laughter is a very powerful thing, it's very true, and it's very pervasive. It doesn't just apply here. But here's the thing about this movie, and I'm probably going to take a lot of crap for it, but I'm going to say it anyways. This movie is going to become extremely dated. Now, a lot of you are going, but 89 Technical, these are cartoons. They're timeless. How can they become dated? Well, let me explain. See, I grew up in the 90s, and the 90s was the last great era of cartoons. I've looked at the cartoons that come out on Saturday morning now. Trust me, these are nothing compared to the cartoons of our day. Philip, I'm pretty sure that you can agree with me on this one. That the kids they have no idea what they're missing when it comes to cartoons. And here's the thing. We saw the original Looney Tunes cartoons that ran even after Mel Blanc died. They ran probably up to the year 2000 and a little bit beyond. But after that the market shifted and they stopped showing them. So here's the thing. They're still Looney Tune cartoons, but they're different from the ones that existed in our day. And this movie is particularly old school in its slapstick and its use of jokes like, "What are you doing, chump? What do you think I'm doing, chimp?" That's a very old school joke. And the problem is the appreciation of humor goes down because the kids that are coming up today will not be familiar with the Looney Tunes or the Mickey Mouses or any of the characters as they were in our day. And going to go back to Blazing Saddles, it's sad because my generation is probably the last generation will be able to watch a movie like this and fully understand it. Later generations, these kids will be able to grasp some of the jokes, and they come hard and fast. But the subtle nuances that are there that take this movie from being a good movie to a great movie, they're not going to be able to pick up on them, and that is such a sad thing. I can give you another example. At the very start of Blazing Saddles, there's a couple of jokes, but unless you know what certain things are, like the wide world of sports, or Walter Cronkite, or any of those things, unless you know who these people are or what they did, you'll get the joke will still make you laugh, but it's not going to make you laugh as hard. And I think for movies like this, that's a very sad thing, and it just downgrades them from great movies to good movies. And it's not their fault, it's not anybody's fault, it's the persistent march of time. But, my honest opinion, I love this movie. I love this movie to death. So, that's my take on it. I'm 89 Technical, and who knows, maybe I'll join you for the next movie club. And I think that you should do Blazing Saddles, because let's face it, we've done a bunch of great parodies so far. We did Super with the superhero parody. We did Tucker and Dale versus Evil with the parody of the horror genre. We've done this one, which is a parody of the old Gumshoe. I think it's time we did Blazing Saddles, which is a parody of the Western, and it's done by one of the best by one of the best comedy producers out there, Mel Brooks. So that's my personal opinion. And if you're wondering why I like Judge Doom so much, I think it has something to do with the fact that I talk like this. I'm 89 Technical. See you later.